It was supposed to be routine. A ceremonial honor. A name announced. Applause. But when that name echoed through the halls of tradition, everything changed. Not a senior royal. Not an heir. Not a seasoned veteran. Instead, James. Young. Unexpected. And suddenly at the center of a royal storm. Because this wasn't just recognition, it was a decision that shattered hierarchy. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The announcement landed like a crack in polished marble. Military honors within the monarchy are not casual gestures. They are weighted with symbolism, steeped in rank and legacy. For generations, such distinctions have followed a predictable path granted to those who have long served, who carry senior titles, who embody established authority. Yet this time, tradition bent. James, still navigating early adulthood, was elevated above figures whose names have dominated royal duty for decades. That single deviation from expectation ignited immediate disbelief. Royal watchers replayed the moment in stunned silence. Commentators leaned forward, voices tightening as they repeated his name. Inside palace circles, whispers spread faster than official explanations. The shock was not rooted in James' character, but in precedence. In a system where hierarchy shapes perception, bypassing senior royals sends a message that cannot be ignored. It suggests recalibration. It implies intention. And intention inside royal walls is rarely accidental. Public reaction mirrored the confusion unfolding behind closed doors. Some praised the boldness, viewing it as a refreshing shift toward merit or generational inclusion. Others questioned the optics. Why him? Why now? What does this mean for those who have waited patiently for similar recognition? Curiosity collided with speculation, and speculation fueled narrative. Within hours, the story evolved beyond ceremony. It became about power, about positioning, about whether the monarchy is quietly rewriting its internal order. The most unsettling element is not the honor itself, but what it represents. Choosing James over higher-ranking royals signals something deeper than youthful encouragement. It hints at a strategic pivot, a recalculation of who symbolizes the monarchy's future. If honors are signals, then this one is flashing brightly. And signals are rarely random. They are placed carefully, designed to communicate without explicit declaration. Those closest to the institution understand this language well. Elevating a lesser-seen royal shifts attention. It redistributes influence. It subtly redefines relevance. For Prince Edward and his family, the moment carries pride. For others, it may carry quiet recalculation, because within monarchy, visibility equals trajectory, and trajectory determines legacy. One phrase lingers beneath the surface of every discussion: this honor carries more meaning than anyone is willing to admit. It is not merely about acknowledging service, it is about shaping perception, about signaling which figures represent stability in a new era. James' name now sits in a place it has never occupied before at the center of royal debate. And once a narrative like this begins, it rarely retreats. It grows. It deepens. It demands explanation. But to understand why this decision feels so disruptive, we must first examine who James is, and why few expected his name to rise above the rest. For years, he remained on the sidelines of royal headlines. Reserved, private, almost invisible compared to his cousins. James, the son of Prince Edward, was never positioned as a central figure in royal narratives, which makes this moment even more extraordinary. Because sometimes the quietest figures are the ones being prepared for something bigger. Unlike other young royals who grew up under relentless flashes and speculation, James was raised deliberately outside the fiercest glare. His parents made it clear early on that visibility would not define his childhood. Appearances were measured, public exposure limited. The strategy was subtle but consistent: allow him space to grow without the suffocating weight of expectation that has defined so many royal heirs. To the outside world, that approach signaled marginalization. But inside palace thinking, restraint can also be cultivation. In contrast to cousins who were introduced early into ceremonial duties and high-profile engagements, James's path appeared understated. He was present yet peripheral. Included, yet rarely spotlighted. Commentators often described him as the quiet one, the royal who seemed content to observe rather than command attention. But history has shown that the monarchy has a pattern of elevating those who have been quietly prepared rather than loudly positioned. Surprise has always been one of its most strategic tools. There were hints, if one looked closely enough, discipline woven into his upbringing, a steady focus on education, exposure to military tradition not as spectacle, but as responsibility. Those close to the family have long suggested that humility and service were emphasized more than rank or entitlement. That philosophy shapes character differently. It creates resilience rather than entitlement. And in institutions where image often overshadows substance, substance can become the most powerful currency of all. It is worth remembering that the monarchy has never been immune to recalibration. Unexpected promotions have altered trajectories before. Figures once considered secondary have emerged central when circumstances demanded steadiness over status. The quiet royal can become the symbol of renewal precisely because expectations were low. By remaining largely outside the cycle of controversy and comparison, James avoided becoming a lightning rod. He remained unburdened by overexposure. That in itself can be strategic positioning. Perhaps being overlooked was not an accident. Perhaps it was insulation, shielding him from scrutiny until the right moment. The difference between invisibility and patience is perspective. While others navigated public storms, James matured away from them. And now, with a single announcement, that period of relative obscurity feels less like absence and more like preparation. What makes this shift so compelling is that it challenges assumptions about hierarchy. Royal prominence has often followed a predictable script visibility leading to recognition. James' rise disrupts that formula. It suggests that influence does not always require constant exposure, that sometimes the institution values stability cultivated in silence over charisma cultivated in spotlight. And yet, this honor was not about potential alone, it was about symbolism. Military honors are never symbolic alone. They represent trust, legacy, continuity. So when James was chosen over more senior, more experienced royals, the question wasn't simply why him? It was what message is being sent. Within the monarchy, military appointments are steeped in meaning. They are not handed out casually or assigned for mere ceremony. They carry weight linking the crown to the armed forces, tying tradition to loyalty, connecting leadership to service. For generations, these distinctions have followed an unspoken hierarchy. Senior royals, particularly those with visible public roles, have historically been first in line. That order has rarely been disturbed. Until now. By selecting James, the institution disrupted a pattern that many believed was untouchable. It was not just about age or experience. It was about precedence. Senior figures, individuals who have spent decades cultivating their presence within military circles, were quietly passed over. The absence of their names from the announcement spoke just as loudly as the inclusion of his. And in royal dynamics, absence is rarely accidental. Public interpretation moved quickly toward one conclusion. This felt like a generational pivot. Commentators began framing it as a signal that the monarchy is repositioning its future earlier than expected. Some praised the move as bold, a refreshing acknowledgement that youth and promise deserve elevation. Others saw it as a calculated reshuffle, an intentional shift designed to redirect focus away from more controversial branches of the family. Both interpretations carry tension. Both suggest that this decision was not random recognition, but strategic placement. Inside palace walls, the atmosphere reportedly tightened. Some insiders viewed the move as a necessary reset, aligning military symbolism with a quieter, less polarizing figure. Others questioned the optics. Would bypassing senior royals create silent resentment? Would it fracture unity within ranks that rely heavily on tradition and respect for hierarchy? These concerns do not surface publicly. They simmer in conversations where language is measured and implications are understood without being spoken aloud. The high-stakes nature of this honor cannot be overstated. Military affiliations within the royal family serve as public markers of authority. They project strength, continuity, and reliability. To assign such symbolism to James suggests confidence not only in his character, but in his representational value. It elevates him beyond the background and places him firmly within the narrative of future stability. And yet beneath the surface, the larger question remains. Is this about rewarding discipline, or is it about repositioning the monarchy's image? The timing alone invites scrutiny, at a moment when generational transition looms on the horizon. Placing a younger royal into a role historically reserved for seniority reshapes perception. It communicates that the future may not unfold along traditional lines. Such signals rarely operate in isolation. They are pieces of a broader puzzle. They anticipate reactions. They account for internal balance. They reflect conversations the public never hears. Because inside palace walls, decisions like this are never accidental. Behind formal smiles and public unity, unease began to grow. This wasn't just about a medal. It was about rank, precedence, influence. And when hierarchy is disrupted inside a centuries-old institution, tension follows quickly and quietly. On the surface, the royal family maintained composure. Statements were carefully worded. Appearances continued as scheduled. But beneath that polished exterior, the shift was impossible to ignore. Senior royals who had long embodied military symbolism suddenly found themselves observing from the sidelines. Surprise does not always manifest as outrage. Sometimes it settles into silence. And silence, in a family defined by order, can be louder than protest. Conversations reportedly turned inward. Precedent became the focal point. Why alter a pattern that had remained intact for decades? What message does bypassing established seniority send to the public and to the armed forces themselves? Loyalty within monarchy is not merely personal, it is institutional. Honors signal trust, and when trust appears redirected, questions multiply. There are implications beyond ceremony. Succession optics matter deeply in a structure built on visibility and progression. Elevating James introduces a new visual narrative. It suggests relevance. It hints at proximity to the future. While this does not alter the line of succession, it reshapes perception about who carries symbolic authority. That perception can influence itself, and influence, once adjusted, rarely returns to its former alignment. For those overlooked, disappointment may not be openly expressed, but it cannot be easily dismissed. Years of dedication, service, and public duty build expectation, not entitlement, but anticipation. To see recognition redirected can feel like a recalibration of value. The monarchy demands emotional restraint, yet it does not erase human response. Quiet recalculations can create subtle fractures if not handled with care. For Prince Edward and Sophie, pride likely mingles with pressure. Their son's elevation brings visibility they have long shielded him from. It places him under a spotlight that cannot be dimmed at will. Pride in achievement now carries the weight of scrutiny. They must navigate celebration without appearing triumphant, humility without diminishing significance. That balancing act defines royal survival. At the heart of it all lies a deeper tension, the delicate balance between merit and monarchy. Was James chosen solely for discipline and promise? Or was he selected because his profile offered a strategic advantage at this precise moment? In institutions where symbolism carries as much force as action, merit and message often intertwine. Separating them becomes nearly impossible. This moment has introduced a subtle shift in internal gravity. Influence is rarely seized loudly within palace walls. It is repositioned quietly, through appointments and honors that reshape visibility. James now occupies a space previously reserved for others. That reality cannot be undone. It can only be absorbed or resisted. And resistance, if it exists, will not be declared publicly. It will surface in hesitation, in carefully chosen words, in recalculated alliances. Because hierarchy may be tradition, but adaptation is survival. But perhaps the real story lies not in who was disappointed, but in who made the decision. Royal honors are rarely spontaneous. They are endorsed, approved, advanced. So who stood behind James' elevation, and what were their motivations? Within the monarchy, decisions of this magnitude travel through layers of consultation long before they ever reach the public. Names are proposed, histories examined, optics weighed, and ultimately, someone with significant authority signs off. That reality transforms this moment from simple recognition into calculated endorsement. James did not rise in isolation. He was elevated through intention. Speculation quickly turns towards senior leadership. Honors of this stature rarely move forward without agreement at the highest levels. Was this a quiet nod from the reigning sovereign, signaling confidence in a younger generation? Or did the push originate from advisors who believed the monarchy must reposition itself before external pressures force its hand? Each possibility carries its own implications. There is also the growing presence of Prince Edward himself. In recent years, his role within the institution has quietly expanded. Steady, dependable, less polarizing than other branches of the family. His reputation for discretion may have made his household an appealing symbol of continuity without controversy. If James' selection reflects that stability, it suggests Edward's branch is gaining subtle traction in royal influence. And traction, once established, reshapes internal balance. This possibility introduces a compelling dimension. Could this be the beginning of increased visibility for Edward's line? Not a dramatic takeover, not a rewriting of succession, but a recalibration of prominence. Elevating James aligns with projecting reliability and understated commitment. It introduces a face that is fresh yet unburdened by past turbulence. That positioning is strategic, not sentimental. Hidden alliances often shape outcomes in ways the public never sees. Advisors, military officials, senior courtiers, each holds perspective on what the monarchy needs in a given moment. If consensus formed around James as a symbol of generational renewal, it would not be accidental. It would be a response to shifting dynamics both inside and outside palace walls. The monarchy has always survived by anticipating change rather than reacting to it. And yet, the deeper intrigue lies in what this signals about power currents. Decisions like this ripple outward. They affect perception. They alter relevance. If Edward's household gains symbolic weight through James, it may subtly influence future assignments, future honors, even future leadership roles. Not in ways that disrupt succession, but in ways that redefine proximity to influence. The mystery persists because such shifts are never announced directly. They unfold through gestures that appear ceremonial on the surface. But beneath that surface, alliances strengthen, visibility redistributes, and quiet figures step into brighter light. If James's elevation is indeed strategic, it suggests that the monarchy is testing a new alignment, one that leans into discretion over dominance, steadiness over spectacle. That choice reveals awareness. Awareness that perception matters as much as protocol. And once perception shifts, it rarely returns to its previous state. Because if this was strategic, it may signal something much larger about the monarchy's future. The monarchy does not evolve loudly, it evolves deliberately. And James's elevation may represent a subtle but powerful reset, a signal that the next era will not mirror the last. For decades, the institution has relied on gradual transition, allowing visibility to follow seniority in predictable waves. But now, something feels accelerated. Younger royals are being positioned earlier than tradition would normally dictate. It is not abrupt. It is not chaotic. It is intentional. By elevating James at this stage, the monarchy appears to be compressing its timeline, preparing the public to recognize fresh figures before necessity demands it. This recalibration comes at a time when stability has become invaluable currency. Controversies in recent years have shaken confidence and reshaped narratives around certain branches of the family. In that context, shifting attention toward quieter, less polarizing individuals carries strategic weight. James embodies a clean slate. His profile lacks entanglement. His story is not saturated with public fatigue. That absence of complication becomes a strength. There is also a clear public appetite for renewal. Across generations, audiences respond to authenticity and relatability more than rigid hierarchy. Rewarding quiet discipline over visible seniority sends a subtle message: dedication matters, even if it unfolds outside constant spotlight. It challenges the assumption that prominence alone guarantees recognition. That challenge is transformative. It redefines how influence is perceived within the royal framework. Yet transformation always carries tension. Generational power recalibration is rarely comfortable. Visibility is finite. Symbolic authority cannot be multiplied endlessly, it must be distributed. As younger figures rise, space inevitably shifts. The monarchy must balance respect for established service with acknowledgement of future potential. That balancing act is delicate, and missteps echo loudly. James' elevation therefore becomes more than personal advancement. It becomes emblematic of a philosophical shift. The institution appears to be rewarding preparedness rather than pedigree alone. It is signaling that continuity requires cultivation, not assumption. That message, while subtle, reverberates through every level of royal order. Emotionally, the weight of redefining hierarchy is profound. For James, the honor marks entry into a narrative that will follow him for years. For senior royals, it underscores that visibility is not permanent. For the public, it offers a glimpse of a monarchy willing to adapt rather than simply preserve. Adaptation, however, is never universally welcomed. Some see renewal as strength, others see it as erosion. The transformative nature of this moment lies in its quiet boldness. There was no grand proclamation about generational change, no declaration of reform. Instead, a single decision altered perception. That is how the monarchy moves when it chooses to move carefully. One appointment, one shift, one signal that the future may be unfolding sooner than expected. But evolution within tradition is rarely seamless. Every advancement creates ripples. Every ripple touches established ground. Yet even as a new generation rises, the older one does not fade quietly. They did not protest. They did not object. But silence can be louder than outrage. And in the monarchy, silence often carries meaning. In the days following James's elevation, public appearances remained seamless. Smiles were measured. Handshakes firm. The choreography of unity unfolded exactly as it always has. Yet beneath that polished surface, recalculation was inevitable. Senior royals understand optics better than anyone. They know that reactions, especially visible ones, can become headlines that eclipse intention. So they chose composure. But composure does not erase emotion. It conceals it. For those passed over, the implications cut deeper than ceremony. Years of service within military affiliations are not symbolic attachments. They are woven into identity. To watch recognition shift elsewhere is to confront an uncomfortable reality. Hierarchy is not invincible. Influence can migrate. And even the most established positions are not immune to recalibration. That awareness does not always breed resentment, but it does introduce vulnerability. Inside the institution, perception is power. When one figure rises, others instinctively assess their own standing. Not through confrontation, but through subtle comparison. Influence is rarely declared. It is inferred. James' new visibility alters the landscape of relevance. It changes how roles are viewed internally and externally. That shift can generate quiet tension, not explosive, but enduring. Media speculation amplified the psychological dimension of the moment. Commentators questioned whether wounded pride lingered behind composed expressions. Articles hinted at disappointment masked by duty. The narrative of overlooked seniority proved irresistible. And once such narratives take root, they shape public interpretation. Even silence becomes suspect. Even restraint invites analysis. The monarchy's challenge has always been balancing hierarchy with fairness. Tradition demands respect for rank. Modern audiences demand recognition of merit. Reconciling those expectations requires careful maneuvering. By elevating James, the institution leaned toward merit-based symbolism. But doing so inevitably unsettles assumptions tied to longevity and precedence. The complexity of that choice cannot be understated. Emotionally, this moment tests discipline. Royal life demands internal resilience, the ability to absorb recalibration without fracturing unity. Yet long-term dynamics are shaped not by visible reaction, but by internal adjustment. If resentment lingers even quietly, it can influence future collaboration. Influence may not be contested publicly, but it can shift subtly in response to perceived imbalance. Foreshadowing hangs in the air, not of dramatic confrontation, but of enduring undercurrents. Relationships adapt. Alliances recalibrate. Perception evolves. James' honor may be celebrated, but its ripple effects extend beyond applause. The monarchy thrives on continuity. Any perceived disruption invites scrutiny that does not fade quickly. Still, no public dissent has surfaced. That restraint speaks volumes. It reinforces discipline. It protects image. But it does not negate the human element within royal walls. Silence may preserve unity externally while concealing recalculation internally. And recalculation shapes future decisions more than any headline ever could. Because once perception shifts, it rarely reverts entirely. It evolves alongside the institution itself, and as emotions simmer beneath the surface, public opinion has begun shaping the narrative. The nation responded instantly. Supporters praised the boldness. Critics questioned the break from tradition. Social media exploded with theories. But beneath the noise, one reality stood clear: James' name was now permanently linked to a defining royal moment. The surge of public curiosity was immediate and intense. Headlines framed the decision as either visionary or reckless. Comment sections filled with passionate arguments about fairness, loyalty, and the meaning of hierarchy in a modern monarchy. For some, this felt like a refreshing signal that the institution is willing to evolve. For others, it appeared to disrupt a carefully preserved order. That divide revealed something deeper. The monarchy's power rests not only in ceremony but in perception. Media narratives multiplied quickly. Analysts debated whether this elevation was symbolic, an intentional nod toward generational renewal, or strategic, a calculated move to strengthen a quieter branch of the family. Each interpretation carried implications. Symbolism suggests hope. Strategy suggests repositioning. And repositioning implies awareness that the royal landscape is shifting beneath its own traditions. Culturally, the elevation of youth resonated beyond palace walls. Younger audiences saw representation. Older generations saw continuity reframed. The image of a reserved, less public royal stepping into a role of prominence created a compelling story of preparation meeting opportunity. It tapped into a broader societal theme, that leadership can emerge from patience rather than spectacle. That quiet discipline can be rewarded in ways that challenge established expectations. The debate over merit versus hierarchy intensified. Was this decision earned solely through personal commitment, or was it part of a broader recalibration designed to modernize the monarchy's image? These questions do not diminish James' character, they elevate the stakes of his visibility. Because once merit is perceived as strategic, scrutiny follows. Every future action will be examined through the lens of this moment. The monarchy depends on public legitimacy more than it publicly acknowledges. Its strength lies in symbolic trust. If audiences believe decisions reflect fairness and foresight, confidence grows. If they sense favoritism or internal politics, skepticism follows. James' honor, therefore, becomes a litmus test not only for him, but for the institution itself. It measures how well tradition and adaptation can coexist without fracturing credibility. As tension rises, so does anticipation. Supporters anticipate a new chapter defined by steadiness and renewal. Critics anticipate potential missteps that could validate their doubts. That dual expectation places enormous pressure on a single figure who, until recently, lived largely outside intense scrutiny. The long-term consequences remain uncertain. Elevation creates opportunity, but it also creates responsibility. James now carries a symbolic weight that cannot be set aside. His actions, demeanor, and choices will shape whether this moment is remembered as inspired foresight or premature disruption. The energy surrounding this decision shows no sign of fading. It has moved beyond announcement into narrative, and narratives shape legacy more than any single ceremony ever could. And now, one final question remains. What does this mean for James himself? At his age, few carry this kind of spotlight. Few inherit this level of scrutiny overnight. For James, this honor is not just recognition, it is responsibility. Until now, his life unfolded largely outside relentless national debate. He moved with relative privacy, shielded by deliberate parental choice and limited exposure. That insulation has evaporated. A single announcement shifted him from peripheral royal presence to symbolic figure. The applause that followed carries expectation. The curiosity carries pressure. And pressure, when introduced suddenly, reshapes even the strongest composure. The emotional weight of sudden prominence cannot be understated. Every word he speaks will now be measured differently. Every public appearance will be interpreted through the lens of this defining moment. Youth, once a protective buffer, becomes a magnifying glass. Supporters will look for signs of promise fulfilled. Critics will search for evidence of premature elevation. Both will watch closely. He now represents more than himself. He embodies generational hope, for some a sign that the monarchy is investing in steadiness and renewal. That symbolism is powerful. But symbolism demands consistency. One misstep could alter perception quickly. Carrying expectation at such a formative stage requires resilience beyond years. It requires understanding that this recognition is not a finish line. It is an opening chapter. The contrast between youthful privacy and royal duty is stark. Private development once allowed him to grow without constant judgment. That freedom is narrowing. Royal duty demands visibility, composure, and discipline under scrutiny. The transition from quiet upbringing to public significance is rarely seamless. It tests identity. It challenges confidence. It forces maturity to accelerate. There is also the possibility that this moment signals something larger. Honors within monarchy often precede expanded responsibility. They familiarize the public with a face before entrusting greater roles. If this is the beginning of increased prominence, James's trajectory may shift dramatically. What once appeared like a supportive gesture could evolve into sustained visibility. And sustained visibility reshapes destiny. Yet uncertainty remains. The monarchy is cautious. It moves deliberately. Elevation does not always guarantee expansion. This could remain a singular acknowledgement, a recognition of discipline without long-term recalibration. Or it could be the first piece of a broader restructuring that positions new figures closer to institutional influence. The ambiguity fuels intrigue. Emotionally, this crossroads is profound. Pride and pressure coexist. Opportunity and obligation intertwine. James stands at a threshold where recognition transforms into expectation. How he navigates this stage will define more than his own narrative. It may influence how the monarchy presents its next generation to a watching world. The unresolved question lingers in every analysis, every headline, every quiet palace conversation. Is this a single honor, an isolated nod to potential? Or is it the first move in a subtle royal reshuffle designed to recalibrate prominence before necessity demands it? Because in the monarchy, honors are never just rewards, they are signals of what comes next. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.